let's go back to Nigeria's big story, which is the Buhari's administration, which is set to make history with the passage of the Petroleum Industry Bill. But while the new oil and gas legislation is getting some condemnation, while in terms of the provisions it made for the host communities, for instance, the PIB's passage has gotten more accolades from economists and analyst community. Let's chat to this now with Steve Osho, who is a co-managing partner at Comercio Partners. Osho is also the managing director at Comercio Capital. Good evening to you. It's good to have you. Welcome.
Good evening, Boasin.
Great.
It's a pleasure.
It looks like this PIB is getting a whole lot more accolades than otherwise. From an outside the oil and gas industry viewpoint, what's your perspective at Comercio Partners on the Petroleum Industry Bill, which was passed last week by the Senate?
Okay, Boasin, if I may start on a lighter note, I think these actually can be likened to you having a 20-year-old car. You know, if you look at the mileage that the bill has actually run in terms of when it was first introduced in 2000 to when we're actually moving close to the end of the passage of the bill in 2021. If you look at that, I think if somebody's giving you a car like that, you say, no, I don't want the car because of the mileage that would have run on that car. But because of the desire of the people to honestly actually have this bill, I think it's something we are going to embrace with all our hands and hearts. So going back to your question, I think if you look at the oil and gas industry since 1969, it's actually been governed by the Petroleum Act and the Petroleum Profit Tax Act. And you agree with me, between that time and now, there's been a lot of inconsistency or adequacies, you know, that needs to be addressed in that sector, in the areas of governance, in the areas of administrations, in the area of fiscal policies, and pricing and tax issues. So I think that's actually warranted the reason why we're having this PIB that has been passing through different assemblies since 2000 till now. And if you look at the breakdown of these, and if you look at what happened at the last 8th assembly under the leadership of Bukola Saraki, you see that that bill was actually broken down into like 4 different categories under the governance, the administrative, the fiscal, and the host community. But between that time and now, there has been a lot of changes that are actually been passed into this new bill, which is waiting for the final approval from Senate and the assent from the President. But again, like I'm saying, I think this is actually the right thing happening at the right time, in as much as this addresses a lot of issues around the governance structure, addresses the issues around transparency in that industry, addresses the issues around the host community. And you could see from the breakdown of that till now that we're going to have something in terms of different ministries or parastatals who are going to have their different board of directors or board trustees who are going to be anchoring different sectors in terms of the upstream sectors, the downstream sectors, the midstream sectors, and having the NNPC Limited, who is going to anchor some of those transactions or the efficiency that is needed within that sector going forward. I think those are the kind of things that we need to look at and we have to unpack in the PIB that makes a lot of sense for investment, and it made a lot of sense for us to have that bill passed at this time.
So we'll break it down, that we couple it together. Tell me about the core economic benefits of this new oil industry legislation.
Well, I think the benefit to the economy of the country is actually very huge. If you look at oil and gas sector, you know that though it contributes roughly between 10% to the GDP of the country, but it's the mainstay of Nigerian economy in terms of the accretions of foreign exchange to our reserves. It contributes almost 90 to 91% to that, and about 60% in terms of profit. So if you look at that and actually pick back to what happened between 2015 and 2019, I think it's about $70 billion that was actually invested or that came into Nigeria. Just barely 4% of that flow actually went to the oil and gas sector. And you agree with me that it's because of some of those issues that we have which is actually preventing a lot of investment or a lot of investors from looking at that sector. So with the passage of the PIB, I think it's going to attract a lot of investment to that sector. It's going to open up that economy to a lot of investors who are looking at that space, because the governance issue, the administrative issues, and it has positioned the NNPC Limited to actually be more commercially viable and have a structure that supports the kind of system we need in the sector. And in terms of pricing, it becomes more profitable for whoever that is actually bringing money to invest in that sector. So the importance or the benefits is actually huge to the economy. And you can imagine having 40 billion coming to that space in Nigeria within 2 or 3 years. How much of that will actually go to our reserve sitting around 34 billion now? It means that we're actually talking about maybe having a reserve that shows up to about 60 to 70 billion. That is actually very huge. And in terms of the efficiency of the system and the contribution to the economy in terms of helping the host community and the trust fund that will actually impact life in that environment, I think is going to be huge. Those are the few of the areas that I'm looking at in terms of economic benefits.
So where is the capital markets in the entire PIB scheme of things? What are your expectations?
Well, I think for the capital market, it's going to bid well for the capital market, because we are going to have a lot of people within that sector who are looking for short-term and long-term financing, and they'll probably approach the capital market for that particular purpose. And again, you are going to have the capital market open in terms of structure, create that liquidity, transparency that is needed in the market, and going to attract a lot of institutionals and retail investors into that space, and going to give a lot of liquidity to people that are operating in that market. So, which means that you are not going to have a very, more buoyant capital market, and you're going to have a lot of flows of FX coming to that space too, which will translate into investment in either your government securities, equities, and so on and so forth that is traded in the exchange.
What about the banking sector specifically speaking?
Well, I think banking sector is going to actually benefit, because if you look at what happened between 2008 to 2013, you discover that a lot of funds, a lot of investments actually went into that sector from the banking sector. And once we have the transparency, you have the right governance in place, we have the right structure, and investment has been attracted from foreign portfolio investors and direct investment coming to that space, I think a lot of banks will actually look at it that is actually a sector to look at now in terms of investment. And it's going to open up a lot of opportunity for banks and others, financial market operators who are looking at that space and who are looking to pump money there. And the more money you have in that sector, the more employment you are going to create, job employment you are going to create, and it opens up the economy in terms of the benefit to the accretions of reserves and the vibrancy of the economy at large.
And you, investment bankers, wouldn't mind a part of the NNPC coming to the market for either a public offer, an IPO, whatever it is, direct listing?
Fantastic. I think it's going to be a good idea.
It's going to
we love that.
I know that. Thank you so much. Many thanks for making it on Arise Xchange. Enjoy the rest of your evening for coming to talk to us from Comercio Partners, co-managing partner at Comercio Partners, and managing director and CEO at Comercio Capital. Thank you so much, Osho, for coming through.
Thank you.
Steve, do have a great evening.